Story 1: The Nightmare Backyard. I was working my usual Friday night shift as a food delivery driver when I picked up a McDonald's order from a guy named Kyle. It was around wine, and the streets were eerily empty. McDonald's was only a few minutes away, and Kyle's drive wasn't much further. His house was at the end of a narrow cul-de-sac, surrounded by a dense line of trees. When I arrived, I noticed that the house was very isolated, and the dim light from the porch barely illuminated the area. I didn't want to ring the doorbell and bother anyone, so I called Kyle. The phone rang once and then went to voicemail. A moment later, I got a message directing me to the door. A balding man in his early 30s answered. His breath reeked of alcohol, and his eyes were glassy. It was annoying, but I tried to be professional. Normally, payment is handled through an app, but Kyle insisted that I come inside and set the food on his kitchen counter while he collected the tip. I hesitated but complied, thinking it might be a good tip. When I entered, the kitchen was dimly lit by a small nightlight, and the air was thick with the stench of decay. I set down the food and began exploring, drawn by the horrible smell. I noticed the stench was even worse in the living room, and the back door was slightly ajar. Curious and desperate for fresh air, I stepped out onto the deck. A swarm of flies buzzed around two large garbage bags. The smell was overwhelming. My stomach churned as I realized the bags might contain dead bodies. Panic rose in me. I quickly went back inside, but Kyle emerged from the basement, holding a few bills. I told him I was just checking something in my car and ran for the door. He grabbed my shoulder, but I yanked it away and ran to my car. As I drove away, I saw him running after me with a metal bar. I reported the incident to the police. Officers arrived quickly and found Kyle trying to move the bags. I never went back to that area, and every night I drive by, I can't help but wonder what could have happened if I hadn't noticed the bags. For more top stories and unforgettable content, subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button, and turn on notifications to stay up to date on our latest videos. Story 2: The Abandoned House. It was a quiet night, and I was working my regular delivery shift at an Asian restaurant. My friend handed me a paper bag of food and gave me directions to a remote address. The house was on a dirt road near the main road. The lot was overgrown with trees, and the house looked deserted. As I approached, I noticed the lack of lighting and the tall weeds. I called my friend back at the restaurant, who passed the phone to our boss. He insisted that I knock on the door. I climbed the creaky stairs and knocked loudly. There was no response, so I walked back to my car. As I texted my friend, a light upstairs, I turned back to the door, which had opened by itself. Pushing it open wider, I called out. My voice echoed throughout the empty house. I climbed the stairs and saw a hand reaching out on the ledge, beckoning me up. The hand retreated into the darkness as I climbed higher. I reached the top and saw the hand beckoning me into a dark room. My skin crawled as I realized I was looking into an empty, pitch-black room. I refused to go any further and demanded money. Suddenly, the hand jerked back, and I was hit by a soft object. I looked down and saw that it was a severed arm. It was real and not a Halloween prop. I ran down the stairs, leaving the food behind, and ran to the nearest house. I was told by a neighbor that the place had been abandoned for over a year. The police were called, but I was still shocked and haunted by the encounter. Story 3: The Driveway is Spiked. I was finishing a late-night shift at Domino's, delivering pizzas to a remote address. I turned off the main road onto a dirt driveway that led to a detached house. Suddenly, I heard a loud bang and my car lurched. I had a flat tire. I walked to the house, hoping the homeowner could help. The house was dark inside, and the curtains were tightly closed. A young man opened the door, and his concern seemed genuine when I told him about the flat tire. He offered to help and went inside to get his tools. While I was waiting, I noticed a small spike strip hidden in the dirt road. It was obvious that someone had put it there on purpose. I panicked, realizing that the man's intentions might not have been as harmless as they seemed. I decided to pretend I hadn't seen the spike strip and told him I hadn't found anything. The man got in, and I quickly got back into my car. I drove away, trying to avoid the spike strip. I glanced in my rearview mirror and saw the man running after me. I accelerated as fast as I could, despite the flat tire. When I got back to the main road, I drove slowly, feeling both relieved and scared. A car with its lights off started following me, and I panicked. I pulled over and called the police, who arrived shortly after and chased the suspicious car. I felt vulnerable and paranoid, and decided to quit my delivery job a few months later. For anyone who does night deliveries, safety should always come first. Trust your instincts. If a location or situation seems off, it's best to be cautious. Avoid entering homes, especially if you feel uncomfortable or the request is unusual. If the customer insists, politely decline and leave the delivery at the door. Charge your phone and stay in touch with a dispatcher or a trusted person who knows your route and condition. Be aware of your surroundings and avoid isolated or poorly lit areas. If you experience any vehicle problems or feel threatened, drive to a safe location immediately and seek help if needed. By staying alert and following these precautions, you can ensure a safer and more secure delivery experience. Your safety comes first, so prioritize safety over any delivery and don't take unnecessary risks. If you're passionate about compelling stories and thrilling experiences, don't miss out on the best content out there. Subscribe to our YouTube channel today for the latest and greatest videos, including exclusive true stories, creepy, and hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Your support helps us bring you more great videos, so don't wait any longer. Subscribe now and dive into the world of adventure and excitement with us. Story 4. The Midnight Confrontation. The night was colder than usual, with a biting chill as I finished my shift delivering pizzas for a local restaurant. It was well past 2 a.m. and the streets were unusually quiet, the only sound being the hum of my car engine. I received a late-night order from an address deep in the woods, far from the beaten path. The GPS guided me through a series of winding roads until I reached a dark, isolated driveway. The house was isolated, hidden among tall trees and dense bushes. No lights were on, and the whole place felt eerie. The darkness made it hard to see much beyond the faint outline of the house against the night sky. I rang the doorbell, my fingers trembling slightly as the cold air touched my skin. I waited a few minutes, moving nervously on the threshold. When no one answered, I called the customer's number. The call went straight to voicemail, and my text message went unanswered. I felt my anxiety growing but decided to wait a little longer, hoping someone would answer. Just as I was about to leave, the front door creaked open a few inches. I hesitated, then pushed the door open wider and called. The lobby was dimly lit by a single flickering light bulb, casting strange shadows on the walls. The man who opened the door was disheveled, wearing a dirty robe that hung loosely over his thin frame. His eyes were sunken, and his expression was strangely blank. Without a word, he reached for the pizza but did not pay. The silence was unsettling. The man insisted that I go inside while he got the money. His tone was firm, almost aggressive, so I reluctantly stepped into the foyer. The inside of the house was just as terrifying as the outside. The air was heavy with a strange smell, a mixture of something burning and a faint, sickly sweet scent. The furniture was old and cluttered, and the dim lighting gave the whole place the feeling of a dimly lit maze. I tried to make small talk, but the man didn't respond. Instead, he disappeared into a dark hallway, leaving me alone. The hallway was filled with piles of old furniture and dusty objects, adding to the feeling of decay and abandonment. My anxiety grew with each passing second. Then I heard a soft, rustling noise from behind me. My heart raced as I turned to see the man emerge from the shadows, but he wasn't alone. A second figure appeared behind him, partially hidden in the shadows. The figure was holding something metallic, and the way the light caught it made it look unnerving. My instincts told me to leave. I made a quick decision, telling the man that I needed to check something in the car. As I turned to leave, the man moved to block my path. I pushed him away, panic rising, and rushed for the door. I could hear a second figure moving behind me, but I didn't dare look back. I ran to my car, barely getting in before I slammed the door. I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw both men standing on the porch, their faces expressionless as they watched me drive away. My heart pounded in my chest as I sped down the road, every shadow and rustle startling me. I drove straight to the nearest police station, my hands barely able to keep steady on the wheel. I reported the incident, describing the house and the disturbing images I'd seen. The police responded quickly, but when they arrived at the address, the house was empty. It seemed abandoned, and there was no sign of the people I had seen. To this day, I still cannot shake the feeling of dread that night left in me. The memory of the shadowy figures and empty house haunts me every time I drive down that deserted road. I can only hope that whatever sinister presence lurked there remains hidden, away from prying eyes,